Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast. I am one of your lovely hosts, Erin, and this is...
I'm Krista.
And wait, I gotta figure out the directional. Okay.
And Brandy.
We are here tonight to talk some other things that we don't usually talk about. Well, we don't talk about a lot of things that are weird, right?
That's all we talk about.
We don't talk about weird stuff. So anyways, tonight we have two people on. We have Lori and Darrell. And Krista, would you like to explain tonight what Lori and Darrell are here for?
Well, Darrell, I'll let you talk briefly about yourself. You're a Bigfoot researcher, but we're not here to talk about Bigfoot tonight. So you want to briefly give a quick bio on yourself, and then Lori, we'll let you tell yourself, tell everybody about yourself.
All right. Oh, real quick, I'm sorry, just interrupted because I forgot. And this is Mark. People are gonna be like, who's that?
I'm not really sure.
And we have Mark.
Right. All right, Darrell, if you want to just tell a brief overview, about yourself with your Sasquatch and all that.
I've been a Bigfoot researcher since about 1999 and had several encounters, befriended several different clans of Bigfoot, and my first encounter is what changed my life completely when I was scared to death while deer hunting in 1992. So I have a group Bigfoot believers and other creatures, and that's how I got involved with the podcast with Krista.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lori, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Darrell and I have been friends now for about 3 going on 4 years. And he came over one night to visit, and we both kind of experienced some really strange things at the same time. And we didn't know each other that well. So I hesitated to say anything about what I was seeing, and so did Darrell. And things kept happening, so we had to. And it turns out we had moved from Nashville to Gallatin, Tennessee, and we live on a plantation, and there's a lot of activity here. So I was glad that Darrell was into the stuff that he was into, so he wouldn't think I was crazy at what I was seeing or hearing.
Right. Totally get that. So tonight's podcast is a little different for us. I mean, usually, we talk about ghosts and stuff, but I've been doing ghost stuff for many, many years. And there's always people who are scared of ghosts. And I get that. There are some ghosts out there that aren't so nice. I think Brandy and Erin can attest, that there's some nasty ones out there.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also some really good ones out there. And so tonight's story, Darrell has a fantastic story about a ghost named Deidre, who I believe he met at Lori's house. So I am going to let you guys, Darrell, you and Lori, start telling that story, everything that happened from the beginning.
I'll start off and let Lori fill in because she remembers some of the things. This all started in about 2019. Lori and Cindy had invited me to come over to their house, and I went over to visit, and we were just like everybody sitting around talking. Matter of fact, I think we were even watching a ball game on TV, and Lori started telling me about a few things she had seen here, and I said, really? Because I never have been a ghost or paranormal. I've seen a ghost beforehand, but not in a long time. And we had talked and had a good evening, and I started up to get to go out the door to leave, and I stopped, kind of like.
Okay, you're kind of cutting out. Are you there, Darrell? Are you there? I think we might have lost.
That's all right. Lori, can you continue with his story? I'm sure you know it.
Yeah, so Darrell and I stood up. He was getting ready to leave, and I was going toward the front door. And when I turned around, I saw something that out of the corner of my eye, like a shadow figure, walk right past me. And of course, I was, just kind of stunned. And I looked at Darrell, and Darrell, he couldn't. His eyes were this big, and I knew he had seen it too. And I said, "What's wrong, Darrell? What do you see?" And he said, "You're not going to believe me, Lori, if I tell you." And I said, "I'll believe anything because I've been seeing things here myself. So don't feel bad about it. Just tell me what you saw."
Mhm.
And he saw a woman coming out of our hall closet, which is right by the front door, walk right past me. And she had a hoe with her. And I immediately knew that it was one of the slaves from the plantation that we live on, because I had to about 2 weeks prior. And I was actually sitting on our sofa and getting ready to go to bed. And there's a back door that I walked past, and I nearly freaked out because when I pulled the blinds back, there was someone standing there. And it was really dark on the porch. And so I didn't know who it was. It had long black hair. And there's a lot of Cherokee activity that went on the plantation as well. So at the time, I did not know. I could not tell if it was what I thought was an Indian or what it was or who it was. And I just took off running until I got my wits about me. And I had seen these things about a week or two prior before Darrell coming over. So when he saw them, it was it confirmed what I was seeing. And I was like, yes, I saw it too, Darrell. So we started talking about things in our lives that we believed and think apparitions or ghosts that we had seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
I bet you it felt really good to be able to share that finally with somebody and be able to experience it. I mean, the first time you see a ghost or anything that's technically in our world we think is not supposed to be there, it's scary. And then when you have at least somebody else to back you up and you feel like you're not crazy, it takes it to a different level. It just
because you don't know, you don't want to go just telling anyone what you see. And but for Darrell to see it, that was just great. I could take a breath and just breathe a little bit easier. That what I was seeing was what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
And also prior to that, we behind our home there's a field, and there's 7 or 8 deer back in it every single day. They come up to our fence. There's a lot of deer around here, but I had noticed that this one deer, she's huge, biggest doe I've ever seen in my life. And when she would come around, the other deer would leave. And it was just very strange. And as Darrell and I started talking, Darrell, you want to tell them about your dream that you had about the rocks?
Well, I had a dream. It was kind of strange. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Right now, yes.
Okay. I had a dream a couple nights after that. It was kind of on my mind because I'd never seen a ghost that close.
Mm-hmm. Well, we lost them. You know what? You guys are in the same house. Why don't maybe, Darrell, you go sit next to Lori?
Yeah, that would probably help.
Right.
Just go sit next to Lori. Yeah.
Are you okay with that, Lori?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's do that.
She's like, no, don't let Darrell just next to me.
I don't want to sit next to Darrell.
Who knows what'll happen? We might both see something sitting here.
Right.
Yeah, come on
But
in.
Daryl, you can like get out of it, and then if you sit next to her, because she has really good service.
Yeah, so go ahead and turn off your phone.
Yeah, I'm gonna
There we
remove.
go.
Okay, there we go.
Here we are. Right.
That good?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot better. You're just
Yes.
gonna have to kind of squish in.
Yes.
All good.
Which in?
Okay, guys, I know I have viewers on here, and I need to say something real quick. I do not know why your comments are not showing up on StreamYard. I just logged into Facebook, and there's a lot of people on there. So I just want to, Brandy, you got your phone with you, or Mark,
Yeah.
can you pull your phone out, or Aaron, somebody watch the comments.
Okay, got it.
And I didn't realize that there were that many people on there and they're commenting. So anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you guys.
You got me.
Okay,
I'm
Daryl.
good.
Okay.
Okay. I had a dream. It was maybe a night or two after I kept having a weird feeling after I left here because I'd never really been around paranormal. And I started having a dream, and I was seeing like a lady, African American lady, talking to me, and I was seeing some large rocks, like boulder size, in the shape of a C. So I talked to Lori the next day, and I said, I keep seeing these rocks in my dream. Do you have any rocks close to you, big boulders? And Lori said, yes, we do. Go ahead, tell her what you told me.
In the field that I was telling you guys about where the deer are, there are about 7 or 8 boulders that are maybe 3 or 4 feet wide, and they're in a circle shape. And Darrell explained to me that one of these rocks he kept seeing is in the shape of a C. And I said, well, let's go back in this field and see what you think, what kind of feeling you get. So we did, and he immediately walked up on one of these that was in the shape of a C.
Wow.
And we just couldn't figure out what was going on with the dream, and we started walking back, and Darrell stopped in the middle of the field, and he just said, I have the strangest feeling right now. I can't explain it. There's something out here. And so it just kind of went from there. His dreams increased. He started seeing this deer that I was telling you guys about.
Wow.
And when you would tell me about it, I started researching the plantation here. And Darrell kept saying, her name begins with a D. I can't remember it right now. And so I had been reading something, and there was African-American slave on the plantation, very young, and the overseer, a baby with her, and when she had it, the baby just sort of disappeared, and her name was Deidre. And as soon as I said Deidre, Darrell said, that's it. She told me her name is Deidre, and that I'm supposed to go to these rocks.
So we actually started going to the rocks, trying to figure out what to do, because she was leading us to the rocks. So we had went to the rocks several times, and I kept having these dreams occasionally, but at the same time, I was getting kind of weirded out because I was having at that time, I was researching a Bigfoot group, and I was having some weird things there at the same time too. And I asked Lori, said, well, let me get something, because Lori's into this stuff about trying to calm your nerves and your soul. So she bought me her and Cindy bought me some crystal rocks. These crystals, they're like rocks, real pretty rocks. And she said, well, carry those with you in your car and whatever, and it'll help ward off any bad spirits that could be existing. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. So I started carrying these rocks. I had one in my pocket, one in my car, and I also had one in my office where my office was at, where my employees were at. And I got in one morning and I rode around with these rocks for quite a while, and I really didn't have I was still having the dreams, but I wasn't feeling nearly as strange as I had been. So I don't know if it was the rocks or they made me feel that way with the confidence from the rocks. So can't say there was any power from them, but it did make a difference. So, so I had come up here to visit them and went out to my car after I left here, and my rock was, I had it sitting right in my console in my car. And I said, I just noticed it because I left it there, and when I got in to start my vehicle, the rock was gone. And I called Cindy and Lori on the way home. I said, it's really crazy, but my rock has disappeared. I don't know where it went. She said,
Can I ask you a question real quick, Darrell? Can I ask you a question? Do you know what kind of stone it was?
It was.
One of them was a chakra, like a worry stone.
Do you know what that is, Erin?
And
not well. I know what a worry stone is, but a chakra stone could be several things. Was it black?
no, it's all the 7 colors of the chakra to align. Yeah, and I also gave him a rose quartz. You know, just something to comfort him. I mean, he was really, really upset about these dreams, and we could not figure out what in the world we were supposed to do. We were just lost.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, the rock disappeared from my car. I couldn't figure out where it went. And I got home. I looked for it to make sure I didn't put it somewhere. I couldn't find it anywhere. I was kind of weirded out thinking, well, how did the rock get out of the car? It was locked up and nobody would have got in the car and not taken anything else without the rock. So a couple days went by before I came back up to see Lori and Cindy. It was probably more like about a week before I came back up. And by that time, I had lost the rock that was in my pocket. I didn't misplace it, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And about the same time, that Friday before I came up here, I asked the girl that worked for me there, my secretary, have you seen that rock that was laying on my desk? And she said, no, I haven't bothered it. Nobody's been in your office. So I had lost like 3 rocks all of a sudden for some strange reason. And I couldn't figure out what had happened to them. And I started second guessing myself, thinking I misplaced all of them. And didn't think anything else about it after a while because they were gone. So we have a mailbox in my office outside. They have mailboxes with numbers on them. Each suite in my office, the offices in this office building have their own mailboxes. And I went out to the mailbox to get the mail. And when I opened the mailbox up, all 3 rocks were in the mailbox.
Wow.
And I was like, really weird. I was really weirded out. I went straight to the office and just sat down and got a bottle of water. And I told my secretary, Nikki, I said, man, there's something crazy going on. And I explained to her what had happened. And I immediately called Cindy and Lori and said, I found all my rocks. They were in the mailbox. So I immediately the next day waited part of the day for the mailman to get there. And I asked him, I said, well, did you find rocks in my mailbox or did anybody put them in my mailbox? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, I haven't seen any rocks and I didn't put any rocks in your mailbox. So I said, okay. So I'm still weirded out about the rocks and all this crazy stuff that's taking place at this particular time. And I was coming up here with Lori and Cindy about every weekend, and we were trying to figure out what all was going on. And it was really getting strange. So tell them what happened next.
Every time Darrell would come up, the deer that I was telling you about would show up on the hill behind us every single time. And she would just stand there the whole time Darrell would be here. And when Darrell would leave, she would leave. So we knew it was tied to the deer somehow and the rocks. And then Darrell had a dream and saw her in the form of a deer. So we started putting two and two together in our minds, thinking this deer is Deidre. And after a time kept going by, and he would tell me what he would dream and what I was reading about the history of this place. We both were on the phone with each other, and the idea came to us at the same time that we think her baby was buried back here.
Oh, wow.
And that rock, excuse me.
So in the meantime, I was thinking I needed to go see a psychiatrist because I'd never had anything like this to happen to me. And I was really at the point where I didn't want to tell anybody, my employees or especially my family. They think I was all crazy.
Me too.
And Lori, I kept telling her and Cindy, I said, this is the craziest thing I've ever had happen to me. So meantime, we were still trying to figure out. We had come to our own idea that by my dream with the shape of the sea we felt like her baby or her child was buried back next to the rocks. We just came up with this theory that may be where the baby must be buried. So so we started going to the rocks back there regularly, and probably 3 times we went back there, the rocks had been moved, and there was nobody to move these big boulders. They're probably weigh 12 or 1,500 pounds, and why they're even back, I have no idea. But they had moved in shape compared to where they originally were. And we actually had taken some pictures. I don't know where they're at. I had another phone at that time. But anyway, we had come to that conclusion. And that this particular day that we were back there, we started saying, this must be where the baby's at, or maybe she's trying to find her child and we're trying to lead her to it. And I went back to my vehicle to go home that night, and there was a palm leaf. Now, this is really strange. I don't know how this plays in. And all this sounds crazy, I know, but it's the honest to God truth. But there was a palm leaf. I don't know where there's a palm leaf at around here, but it was under my windshield wiper on my vehicle. And I came back in and said, Lord, where did this come from? She said, do y'all have any of these type plants? She says, no, we don't have anything like that. And I was, well, why is this under my windshield wiper on my car? And I started thinking maybe the neighbors had done it and looking around, and it didn't really, at that time, I was at probably as good as out as I've ever been. And I was kind of nervous to even go home that night. And well, y'all stay here with us tonight, and it'll be okay. Don't go home, because I had a real big house and I lived by myself out in the country. And so I decided later on that night that I would go home. So I got it at that time. I had a shitty Equinox that I worked out of, and all my equipment in the back, because the tailgate was perfect for that, where it raised. And I was driving home, and it's a lot of windy back country roads between their house and where I live. And I got to a main highway, but there wasn't a lot of traffic on it this time of night. And I stopped at the highway, at the stop sign, to make a right to head toward my house. And it's just a normal thing. You look in your rearview mirror to see if anybody's behind you. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, there was a face in the mirror, a face of a woman, a mirror, that was in the back seat of my car. Well, I got completely flipped out. I grabbed my phone slowly, and I reached into my console and got my gun. I thought somebody had got in my car when I had it parked. And I raised my phone to take a picture, and I did take a picture of this face, and I sent it to Lori, and I have it on my old phone. And I'm sorry I don't have it tonight, but I can provide it. But I was so scared to death, I jumped out of my car with it running in gear and opened the back door, and there was nothing in the back. But there was something when I looked in the back, and I looked in the mirror. So by this time, I was like, I needed to go home and find some Jack Daniels. So I had this nervous wreck going all the way to the house. I got to my house and I even stopped and got out and looked again when I pulled in my driveway to make sure anybody wasn't in my car. And nobody was in my car. And I got to the house immediately. And when I did, I went in and regular thing, went to my den and sat down and I called Lori and I said, I don't even know if I can sleep tonight. This, whatever this thing is come home with me or tried to come home with me. And she said, go ahead and tell him what you said.
He was so frightened. We thought he had wrecked. I mean, he was saying there's something in my car, something in my car. I mean, we didn't know what was going on until he calmed down and told us. And he sent me that picture, which we'll find. And when I looked at it, I could clearly see. To me, it looked like there were 3 people in his back seat, and the person in the middle had red eyes. And in my mind, it looked like a female, but it was also kind of like a skeleton. Mm-hmm. And the other 2, one on each side, were smaller, and they had red eyes. And I was so freaked out then, like Darrell. I was like, oh my God, maybe we're on the wrong path. This Deidre thing is evil. You know, I was just like, what the hell is this about?
Right.
And
I didn't sleep for probably about 3 nights. I was in the house. Every noise I heard, I thought, what is that? I was up looking around, and it was really weird. It was, I didn't really know what was going on. It was the strangest thing I've ever had happen to me. So,
and a couple of days after that, I was in the house by myself. It was like 7 or 8 at night, and I walked through the kitchen, and I saw a figure again walk right past me, go through the wall. And when I just turned around, and the ghost turned around, and it was an African American person, about, I would say 17 or 18. That I don't know if she looked at me or she just went right through the wall. I mean, it was crazy. And so that confirmed to me that it was Deidre, and it's all tied together. And then we started talking about the palm that was on Darrell's car, and I was thinking, well, maybe she's thanking you, Darrell, that you're trying to help her find her baby. And she left us alone for a long time after that, and we didn't know if we had done what we were supposed to do, or was she going to return? And I didn't see the deer back here for a month. And then she came back, and we said, well, maybe we're not, we're not finished.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But weird stuff just kept happening, and she went away again.
Yeah, nothing happened to me at all after that. I didn't see her.
So what year was this in? What year did all this take place in?
2019.
2019. Okay.
And so meantime, my wife and children, we were separated for a long time. They moved to Virginia on the ocean with her close to her dad. And that was in, I don't remember, probably June of 19. And they had wanted me to come up there. The kids were upset, wanted me to come and be with them. Mm-hmm. They asked me to come to Virginia. So I said, okay, I'll come for the kids. And I moved up there for the kids. And when I moved up there, this was December of 2020. And it was the 22nd when I moved up, when I drove up there and carried a trailer with my stuff, and moved in with my in-laws for a while until I got a house not too far from them. And that was late January of 21. And the reason why I'm telling about this, because the story picks up again. So in January of 21, late January, I started getting really sick, and I don't ever and I was getting, for about 2 weeks, I'd had a fever. I was really sick. I went to the hospital and got tested. They said, yeah, we'll let you know if you have COVID. About a day later, they called me back and said, you have COVID, stay in the house, don't go anywhere, quarantine yourself for family members. So this went on, and it was almost another 2 weeks when I was so sick that I couldn't even walk. And I had a real high fever for about 7 or 8 days, like 104.5. And I couldn't hardly even get up. I was so sick. And so I decided to go to the hospital, and my wife drove me to the emergency room, and I got out. I couldn't walk, and they came out and helped me in. And they emergency room, and there was people everywhere. And it was just packed. It was right when the COVID had just hit. You couldn't hardly find anywhere to sit down. And I was trying sitting in the floor next to the door. I was so weak I couldn't sit up. And so this nurse comes out of the back, this black nurse, light-skinned black nurse, comes right to me with all these people sitting around and says, get this guy in the back room. And they helped me up and put me in a wheelchair and rode me back to the back room and put me in a bed. And she kept talking to me, don't go to sleep. And they started doing the vital stuff they do and checking me, and they were giving me insulin, put that in my arm, and she kept slapping me in the face over and over, don't go to sleep, don't go to sleep. Yeah, we don't want you. We want you to stay here with us. Don't go to sleep. We'll take care of you. You're not gonna die. I'm gonna take care of you. And I was kind of, first of all, kind of weird. Why were they picking me out of all these other people? But that went on, and that night, and I got her, and they came in and said, well, we're going to move you to intensive care. And I had a breathing apparatus on, and this lady kept saying, no, you're not taking him anywhere. He's staying with me. I'm going to make sure he's taken care of. And all these doctors were coming in and working on me. And this doctor came in and said, we're going to have to give you a blood transfusion or you're probably going to pass away. And I said, well, I could understand what they were saying, but I was incoherent a little bit. I wasn't myself by any means. And I said, well, I don't know about a blood. She said, well, you got two choices. I said, well, let me call my sister-in-law, who's a doctor, and see about a blood transfusion. And they called her, and she said, do it or you'll pass away. So it's called a blood plasma transfusion. And they gave me this blood plasma transfusion, and this lady was with me the whole time, this black nurse, a registered nurse, and she kept telling me, don't go to sleep. She's bringing me water, taking great care of me. And I'm thinking the whole time, why is this lady being so good to me? So after I took the blood transfusion, it seriously was maybe 2 or 3 hours. I was feeling like normal. I wasn't even sick anymore. It was absolutely amazing. But they moved me to the second floor, which is the intensive care department. She took me up there, they rolled me up there, and she went with me. And I said, are you leaving? And she goes, no, I'll be back. You're okay now. I'll be back. And they put me in on that floor, which is the ICU floor. And I was there about a day or two, and they kept coming in, different doctors. And I kept asking, where's the black lady that has, let me go back a second. When this lady, I started noticing things about her. And she had yellow tennis shoes, which was very strange, with scrubs on, with a pink sweater, and she had a name tag on, and she had her hair in a bun, like pulled out with a tie on it, and she kept smiling at me. And I remember reading her name tag; it said Deidre, and I kept thinking, why Deidre? I didn't put it together until later. But so anyway, after about, I think I was in there 10 days, I think is how long I was in there. Maybe been a little less than that, but nobody could see me. So I kept asking, where'd the nurse went that took care of me, and they said, well, she's down in the emergency room. So long story short, I was ready to check out, and I was so happy with how these people are taking care of me. I asked the doctor, I said, can you get me a list of all the people who took care of me on all these floors and in the emergency room, because I want to do a letter thanking the hospital and how good they've been to me, and they saved my life. And she said, I'll do that for you. And so they brought the list in, and I looked at it, and there was probably 12 or 14 names on there. And I said, well, where's the lady in the emergency room? And they said, well, we don't have anybody by the name of Deidre in the emergency room. I said, well, that was her name. I remember her name tag. The lady said, well, we don't know who you're talking about. Well, nobody there knew who I was talking about. I asked everybody at every shift, different people would come in. They didn't know who I was talking about. So the day before I checked out, I asked for the doctor, and the doctor came in, and I said, well, the lady in the emergency room who helped me, her name is not on here. Her name was Deidre. And she said, we don't have anybody here that works here by that name. And I said, well, she works here. And she said, what did she look like? I said, she was a black lady, light skinned. She had a pink sweater on, yellow tennis shoes, had her hair pulled up in a ribbon, and her name was Deidre. And she says, well, let me do some checking. And she came back that afternoon when I was time to check out, and she goes, can you give me just a minute? And I was check out. She goes, I want to talk to him alone for a second. And she shut the door, and she said, I know who you're talking about. I said, well, why can't I get her name? And she said, well, Deidre, who you're talking about, worked here for about 9 years. She worked on this floor and the emergency room. She died of COVID 14, I think it was 14 weeks ago. And I said, no way possible, because she helped me in the emergency room. And they said, well, you're just mistaken. You're incoherent. You've been on medication. And I said, no. I know what she looked like. And I told her again. She goes, well, I can tell you one thing. Everything you told me is what she wore. So that's the story.
We had been trying to get in touch to find out if Darrell was doing better in the hospital. We couldn't get through. I didn't know what hospital he was in. I couldn't reach anyone. And they finally let him call. The nurse dialed our number, and I ran and got Cindy, and I said, someone's calling from Virginia. It's got to be Darrell. I answered the phone, and a nurse was in Darrell's room and said he couldn't talk very long, but he was asking to talk to us to let you know he's okay. So I said, please let us talk to him. So she put him on the phone, and I could still tell he was on a lot of medication, but he was telling me, Deidre was here, Lori. Deidre was here. She took care of me. She saved me. And
wow.
This was like, what? And of course, I couldn't talk to him for very long, but he said that he technically, didn't you flatline? And she brought him back.
Wow.
That is
I think she brought me back twice. I know once, but I don't know if this is the same Deidre that we had all the things with here, but it was very strange that person was in the hospital and she passed away like 14 weeks before.
Well,
and,
do you remember, Darrell? I told you I do not believe in coincidence, and this is a clear example of why. That was not a coincidence.
No.
So I felt like after a lot of time and thought after this happened, I didn't tell anybody about this because everybody thought I was crazy. So I did mention it to a few people, and they said, oh, you were medicated. You don't know what you're talking about. And I asked the hospital people if I could tell the story to the news, and they said, no, do not use our hospital name or any of the people here's names on the media. And I said, well, why not? And they said, we just don't do that here. And I said, okay. And I felt like maybe Deidre had come back and paid me back for finding the place her baby was buried. That's all I could come up with. So I know it's a crazy story and hard to believe, but it happened.
And when Darrell left Tennessee and went to Virginia, I never saw Deidre again. He would call me and say, "Have you seen that deer?" And I'm, no, maybe she followed you there. And evidently she did.
Yeah. So with you being there like tonight, who's to say she won't make a reappearance? You know,
Right.
I feel like
When
she's connected to you for some reason. I mean, Aaron and Brandy, what do you think about that? Would you agree?
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's kind of just everything as I'm listening to the story, I'm kind of putting pieces together. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of go through it and kind of, I don't want to say dissect it, but I'm just going to kind of explain a few things that I feel is a lot of it. So first off, having the chakra stone, that right there, that is going to align you, which is a good thing. We want that.
I actually happen to be holding it. You can see it. But this is what I gave.
Stone? Very cool.
It's beautiful. I love chakra stones. What they do is they will align you. They will make you kind of centered and kind of pull everything together. It focuses on each one of the chakras, which when they're lined up, you're more in tune with yourself. Yeah, like Mark's got one. It just kind of keeps you more in tune with yourself. Mm-hmm. So then you also have the rose quartz that heals the heart area. So with these stones, you're kind of healing yourself to a way of, if you're already maybe sensitive to a degree, not saying that that's what you are, Darrell. I mean, like, I don't want to out you or anything like that. But if you have any sort of I believe we all have abilities. So this possibly could have maybe intensified that to a degree, because you're lining yourself up. You're becoming equal. It's like a balance, an equilibrium. And then this deer. So deers represent intuition, highly sensitive. So when you see deers, that could be your spirit animal. When you're seeing an animal consistently, and this could be for the both of you, you're consistently seeing an animal that is sticking out to you. This is what they would call a spirit animal. The deer, especially a doe, they're very much keep watch, keep yourself aware. And it's also a huge sign of intuition. It's also saying be aware of your surroundings, which then to me tells me that you're seeing this deer and then you're having experiences. It's telling you, okay, light bulbs out there. You guys are all lined up because you got those stones. So now I'm going to show you things because I want you to pay attention. And that is exactly what you were doing. When you would see the deer, you associated that with the spirit, which then made you kind of pay more attention. And obviously the spirit was trying to get some sort of message across to you, and you were listening. And then Darrell, you're sleeping, and that is the perfect time for a spirit to get in contact with you. If you are not, whether you are a trained medium, a trained psychic, or if you're just here, that is a perfect time for it to get in contact with you, because that itself, being asleep, is the perfect meditative state. They can connect with you, they can contact you. So to me, this sounds like the perfect situation for a message that somebody has been waiting a very long time to get through to. You have two people who are open to having abilities. You've got two people now that are you got two. When you get two psychics in a room, or people with abilities, you got two light bulbs going in a room, it makes the room brighter, correct? That's kind of like what it's like.
Right.
You get one in there, you get two even brighter.
Well, the doe is the nurturer. The doe is the nurturer. So if she appeared, there was something to be said. So that was definitely a sign.
It's a wonderful spirit guide to have too, like as a an animal spirit guide. It's a wonderful one to have, and the fact that that's what they were bringing to your property, that's a very beautiful sign, a very gentle sign.
Absolutely.
We felt like it took us both to complete a puzzle, and Darrell was able to do the dreams, and I was able to feel things and see things, and it took us both to figure out what in the heck was supposed to, because at first we were just lost. Like, how can we help her? What can we do to help her? I mean, it was a feeling of sadness when you saw her. I mean, desperation, sadness, like wanting to say, look, can't you figure out what I want here? And it took us both.
It wasn't for you to figure out. That's the whole thing. It wasn't for you. She was there for you. You weren't there for her. So that's the great part of it.
But the wonderful thing is that because of their openness to the experience and the coincidence, not by accident, that these two met each other, they were able to together help tell somebody's story, which in turn helped them survive, because I mean, you then, they pass this on to maybe other spirits or ghosts or whoever to help you survive when you're in the hospital. It's kind of it's a wonderful circle of life when you see that, they were people at once too, at one point. They were you and I.
So there's a lot of things around this area here in this plantation they live in. And I mean, there's all kinds of sightings of slaves crossing the road and everything, but I never thought one of them would become attached to me like that, though. That was I never had anything like that to happen. And really, I didn't really tell many people about it because people would think you're crazy to tell this story. So, but it's really what happened. And I have a couple witnesses that seen it, everything but the hospital part, but there were people there that seen that. So, but I think probably.
Real quick, did Deidre, like you said, she brought you water and stuff? She literally brought you water.
Yes.
Like that.
Literally.
Wow. Yes. That's incredible.
She put the straw in my mouth.
Wow. I think that they do that though. So, I mean, we'll get maybe into it a little bit later. Like with my story, I have a story not anywhere as cool as yours by any means, but I had a spirit help me as well, like that. And and this spirit gave me ice cream. So I mean, they do feed you. It's really weird. I don't know how to explain it. They will feed you. I guess if they really like you, they'll give you food like a mom.
Marie Bolt, she says that Darrell, you were very blessed, and I agree with her 100%.
Thanks, Marie.
Absolutely.
Save my buddy.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm so glad that we got to hear this, because people, the thing that we try to tell people with ghosts and spirits, that yes, it is scary. I'm not gonna lie, I will run out of a room. Whether you're a good ghost or a bad ghost, it still scares me. I see dead people and it still scares me. I don't care. Like, it does.
Me and Brandy don't, though, do we, Brandy?
No, you guys don't run. I run. No. I am like Scooby-Dooing it out of there. It's terrible. No. I just startle easily. I think it's just all the years of having junk pop out of nowhere. I have a tough time with it still. But it's nice for us to be able to explain to people that when you see a spirit and a ghost, you have to remember that they were a mother once. They were a grandmother once. They were somebody's best friend. They were somebody's first kiss. Like, they were something to someone. And that you get a very rare opportunity to see that person, when I bet you there's someone that loves that person so much that would love to see them as well. And whether, that's been centuries ago or not, it's a good reminder that was a person. And that's kind of in the same sense of when you have a negative entity, a negative spirit in your home. If you're excuse my language, but if you're an asshole in life, you're an asshole in death.
Mm-hmm.
So,
agree.
you know, that's where you kind of get that.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you guys something really interesting, and it all kind of played in out, like I said, more like a puzzle. Years ago, I went to see a psychic, and she told me, I want you to remember 3 things. And she said, you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you each one, but whatever. And I said, okay. And I've always been kind of open to things. So, you know, I didn't, whatever. So she told me the first one that I would find that I had 2 sisters that I did not know about. Second one, I would be moving within 6 months to water. And the third one, that she believed I had a past life and that I would be living on a plantation. She described the home to me, and she said, I don't know what role you played on this plantation, but you lived there or you had a lot to do with there. So,
Wow.
True enough, I'm adopted. I found out I had 2 sisters. That was about 5 or 6 years after she told me that. Immediately, we had some trouble with the home we lived on, and so we moved on water. Then I forgot about the third one. And when we moved out here, it never entered my mind at all. We drove past, it was winter, all the leaves had come off where this plantation home is. It just sits like it was when it was built in 1830 something. And someone lives there. I've been in the house, and it looks just like it did. And so when we drove past it, I said, hey, Cindy, I got to back the car up. I just noticed that the front of this house is identical to the rear of the house. And she said, what? So we backed up, and you know, it was the first time we could see the back of the house because of the trees. And it just hit me out of the blue right then. And I said, oh my God, we live on a plantation. This is the house that she said she saw me on the balcony of. Wow. And I just could not believe it. And
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So ever since I moved here, Darrell and I have talked about that. It's like I have some tie here. And when this started happening with us, I started asking my neighbors, you know, I didn't want to tell them what I was seeing. I want to freak them out. And I was just like, did y'all ever, you know, because we were good friends. And I would say, did you ever have kind of weird things happen to you around here? And they started telling me about things. And then the girl that we bought our home from, I contacted her, and she said, yes, Lori, I can tell you, my boyfriend was not comfortable there. And long story short here, he was scared to death because he saw something, and it had to do with a deer. And we think that Deidre ran him off.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I do have a question for you, Lori.
Uh-huh.
So me, it sounds like Brandy and Aaron and myself, we need to take a road trip to your house.
You really
Sounds like
good.
weekend fun.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And they have an absolute.
And they're like, oh, not me.
Sorry, Mark. It's a blonde booze thing.
Don't worry, Mark. You can hang out with me, buddy.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity in and around here. I found a blog where there was an electrician that did some work on the home before the new owners moved in. And he decided to come out, take a lunch in his truck and have a sandwich. Well, he looked in his mirror and he saw a African American in the back of his truck bed, and he thought somebody jumped in his truck bed, and he jumped out and they were gone. And then later it dawned on him he was a slave. So there's a story people see around here. But then again, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, you know, because they're afraid that we're on a burial ground kind of thing. And so I've been very selective in who I've told about it.
Sure. I understand.
We've actually seen some strange things behind the house here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and when it rains, I see images of skeletons. I see an outline of a rectangle grave. I mean, I can see all that now. And ever since this stuff started happening with Deidre, I see more and more because I guess I'm open to it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like me.
Yep.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
You know, it terrified me at first. Now it doesn't. I just kind of accepted it. It is what it is.
Well,
you know, after what she did for Darrell too. I mean, she's good, 100% good. You know,
she's no doubt.
You know, I mean, I would feel almost protected to have her around. You know, for sure.
I do, and it's just a feeling that we have, and you know, I think if this hadn't have happened, Darrell wouldn't be sitting here. So
I agree. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Aaron, you got a little story about a good ghost as well.
I do. I have a couple, but one of them I think it might help Darrell to know that he's not crazy. Or you know, and nothing's weird that this has happened to other people, you know. So growing up when I was very little, I had a lot of kidney issues. And this back in the 80s where there's
Aaron, you're kind of cutting out. Aaron, you're kind of cutting out.
Am I still cutting out?
Not now.
Oh, shoot.
We heard the kidney issues when you were younger.
Okay, still good now?
You're good.
If I do this?
You're good.
Okay. Okay. So I had kidney issues as a kid. This was back in the 80s where there wasn't a whole lot of antibiotics, and I was on antibiotics an awful lot, and I became immune to all of them. My kidneys, I got a severe kidney infection, and my kidneys started to shut down. So I was in the hospital, and I had a extremely high fever, and I was hospitalized for quite a while. And I basically no antibiotics were working, and so just everything in my body was starting to shut down. My parents said that a church group came in and asked if they could pray around me. And at that time, my family was not religious, but at that time it was kind of like, hey, whatever you got, give it to her, because she's, you know, not doing well. So this church group came and prayed around me. Soon after that, my mom started telling me, talking about shiny.
You're cutting out again, Aaron.
Shiny.
Yoo-hoo, Aaron, you're cutting out again. Okay, you're back. You're back. Okay.
I'm back.
Back up just a little bit in your story.
Living on the country. It's fun, they said.
Right.
My mom, which part did I leave off at? You're asking the girl with ADD, Lord in heaven.
You were talking about the prayer group.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the prayer group came, they prayed around me. Soon after that, my mom said that I started talking about the pretty shiny lady who was in the corner of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And my mom, I just kept telling my mom, I kept saying, Mama, she's so beautiful. She shines, she glows, she sparkles, and she's so pretty. Well, my mom, kind of being freaked out, just said, don't go to the light. like don't go. You know?
It's funny.
That's Jesus. Don't say hi. You know. So I didn't go to the light, but my parents were always, there was always somebody with me. There was either my mom or my dad or my grandmother. Well, there happened to be a time where I thought I was alone, and I remember walking out, and this was when I was at like the peak of being sick. I walked out of my room, and I can still remember this part. I walked out of my room and I remember crying because I was alone and I felt alone. And I remember this nurse came up to me and she took my hand and she said, "No, you don't need to cry. You're not alone. I have you." And she took me back to this room by the nurse's station and she gave me ice cream and then took me back to bed and tucked me in and like gave me a hug and a kiss, and I went to sleep and I was fine. So after that, I remember asking my mom and dad. Well, at that point was when I kind of started getting better after a few days. And I remember asking my mom and dad who was the nurse, and my mom and dad saying, "We never left you alone. Not one day did we ever leave you alone. So we don't know who that nurse is because somebody was always here with you. I mean, you were in intensive care. You were dying. We're not going to leave our 8-year-old alone by herself."
Right.
And not to mention that before then too, I wouldn't eat. I couldn't eat. So let alone, I still remember to this day my dad crying, begging me to eat just one bite of a hot dog.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't do it. Like I just could not eat. So to
Well,
imagine
I personally couldn't eat a hot dog if I was sick, if I wasn't sick. Just saying, just throwing that out.
Well, that was when the hospital brought me. It was like, okay, bring her a hot dog. I don't know, but like, so to eat a bowl of ice cream was very odd. But I remember eating it, and I remember going back to my room, and it was a few days after that I remember they found an antibiotic that could work, and I got better. And that was really, after that happened was when I really remember seeing more spirits and seeing, being able to communicate with them more. I think it was always there. I just think that having that experience of so close to death that you see the other side of the veil, it did something. It made you that much brighter, I think, to them. And so, I know
That's
a lot of
really a great story. That's a great story.
Yeah. So I mean, I get it, and I think I thank God for that experience. I'm glad I'm better now, but that I relate where people would tell me, "Oh, you had a fever, you were imagining it." And my mom said it was just very odd because I didn't see anything else. I basically slept the whole time, but yet the only thing I ever what somebody would say hallucinated was this shiny, beautiful woman who would stand in my room. And I would just talk, or this nurse that I say, I have a whole thing of like, yeah, she took my hand. She's told me I'm not alone. I felt cold. I remember distinctly feeling cold. I felt cold. Yeah. I was alone in this hospital. And I remember walking out into the hall. And I remember walking out into the hallway and nobody was out there. I was all by myself. And this nurse just grabbing my hand and telling me, "Honey, you're not alone."
You know what's wild? You were just talking about you were cold. I just told Darrell 2 minutes ago when you were telling the story, I said, I'm freezing. And I showed him I've got goosebumps. So it was like I was freezing. That's strange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who's to say Deidre's not there listening to us right now, honestly.
She probably is. She's probably like, "Hey, I know this story."
Yeah.
Aaron, you sure her name wasn't Deidre?
Right? I wish I knew what her name was. I didn't, being so little, I didn't think to ask. She had a bowl of ice cream. I was like, all right.
I just want the ice cream.
We didn't hear you, Lori. What was that?
Since that time, since you were little, have you seen or had a dream of her since?
No, I
the
haven't.
Woman that helped you?
It's hard for me to remember what she looks like. I remember just her feeling of love. That I remember that more than I remember her
physical looks, right?
Her facial features. I just remember going from feeling cold and alone and crying to feeling like I'm going to be okay. And I was so small and she was tall that I just remember holding her hand and sitting on her lap and eating ice cream and just feeling like I'm going to be okay. And so I wish I would have seen her. I don't know if she was one of my guides. I don't know. Personally, I think that the nurse that was that did that was probably a nurse that had one point worked at the hospital. And helped me. That's what I feel. I feel like that was a ghost per se.
So let me ask you a question. So Darrell, had Deidre at the house, and then, as his nurse, and probably same with you. I mean, do you think like the old Deidre was the new Deidre reincarnated, or what are your feelings about that?
What's Who knows? That? That's interesting. Who knows? Because I mean, we all happen upon areas and situations not by accident. So
right.
Hard to say.
I think the strange thing for me was I kept seeing her name tag. She had a sweater on and it would slide over, and I kept remembering the name tag and looking at it. And I can see the name tag like it was right now. It had like a little ribbon on the name tag, but it wasn't on it. It was made into it. And it had her name on there in black. And I started thinking, Deidre, where do I know that name from? And as I was getting better, I started thinking maybe that was a possibility, but I didn't think it at that time. But to me, it's really it's really a crazy story. A lot of people would think you were crazy to come up with this story, but it all happened, and it played out over such a long period of time. It was like almost like she was my guardian angel, or she was trying to pay me back for what I did for what we did for her. So that's the only conclusion I've ever been able to come up with. So, and I haven't seen her or heard from her since. And as far as I know, you haven't seen her or the deer at all, but one time since then. So, apparently we accomplished what she wanted. So,
right. So, Lori, do you have activity that's ongoing at your house now?
Yes. Yeah. Before Deidre, I was telling you all these deer out here all the time, and I was just amazed when we moved out here. When we drove through here, I was like, why? Everybody must either be feeding the deer or something. They're up in their yards, really right by the house. And then this field behind us. And so I had bought a pair of night vision goggles and or binoculars. And so I was watching, because behind me I could see shadows of them. They would sleep back here on the berm, and I just was intrigued by them. So I started looking at them, counting how many there were, see if it was the same deer all the time. And one night I just happened to pan to my left where those rocks are. That's how I knew we had those rocks. And those rocks were put there for, there's a street that backs up to there where someone had tried to walk through one time and break into one of the homes. So they actually moved those boulders from the plantation home to there. So at one time those rocks were on the plantation. And
this is a gated community. You have to have a code to get it. It's really secure. So I imagine that's why the rocks are there.
Right. So that someone couldn't drive through there. And so I just happened to see one of the deer running, and I panned around watching it. And when it got to the middle of these rocks, they're like, now they're in a semicircle. I thought, what, what am I seeing? And I stopped and looked again. And this camera, these goggles also have a camera. So I took a quick picture, black and white, and came running in the house. And when I looked at it, I immediately saw the form of a man, an older African-American man. And he had his arms out, like carrying something. And I kept looking at it. I thought, I am crazy. This is before the Deidre thing. I was like, well, this can't be. And I went and looked again, and it was still there in the center of these rocks. And I could see his legs. His eyes were black, but I could see his, I mean, there were no eyes. So I could see his head, what looked like pants made out of you would say an old potato sack like. And there were sticks going, sticks going across his arms. And I figured out he was carrying sticks. So I called Darrell and I said, Darrell, this is right after he had seen Deidre in the hallway, but we didn't know anything about that. And I said, I just saw something that I cannot explain, but I've got it on camera. Before I got it out of my mouth, Darrell said, you saw the wood chipper. And I said, the what? And he said, you saw the wood chipper. Lori had a dream about it. And I said, the wood chipper? And he said, he's from the plantation and his job was to cut wood for the fires. And I was like, oh, I just couldn't believe what I heard. And he said, and he said, but that's not the only person you're going to see. You're going to see a woman, and I can't tell if it's an animal or a child. But so for months, I was out there every night looking, and same thing. He would bend over. I could see him physically bend over. He didn't look at me, and he would carry this wood. He didn't walk or anything. It was like the same spot. One night I went out there, and it was on a holiday. I can't remember which one. And I looked, and then there were two. There was a woman that had her hair wrapped up and tied, and what looked like a dress, a bigger woman with a dress, and she literally had her arm around him, one arm. And I took a picture of that. So I ran back in and I said, well, I've seen the woman now. Got there and I was like, I've seen this woman. And I saw the two of them for a solid year or so. And then I did see something small on the ground. It looked like legs, but I couldn't tell if it was a child that was looked like it was crawling, or it was an animal. I could not make that one out, but the other two I definitely could. And I was
tell them about the night that I came up and we looked at the tree down there and seen the red eyes. That was the craziest thing.
Yeah, this stuff, after I saw it so many times, it didn't scare me. And I kept running to Cindy and saying, look at this picture. What do you see? She couldn't see it. And I thought, why can't she see it? I see it plain as day. It's in this photograph. And then I would ask some of my other friends, and they were saying, there's a man and a woman there. They could see it. And he's carrying some sticks. They could see it. And so Darrell, when he would come up, we'd run out to the fence to see what we could see. And I handed him the binoculars one night, and I said, look, Darrell, look down there and see if you see. You look tonight first. And so he looked and he put them down real quick. And he said, oh my God. And I said, what is it? And he said, I'm not going to tell you, Lori. And he said, you don't even need the binoculars. Look down there. Well, they're
telephone pole, usually in a tree.
Yeah, there's
big tree,
to the left of these rocks in the back of someone else's, back of someone else's yard. And I saw it immediately. There were a pair of red eyes. And it was like, here's the tree. They were on this side of the tree. They would move to this side. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I said, Darrell, are you seeing? He said, red eyes. I said, yeah. And this went on for 5 minutes. And then we saw another pair. And it was crazy. So
this wasn't close to the ground now. This was like 15 foot up.
No.
Question, do you feel that it was like a ghost or like a cryptid type, a Bigfoot or something?
Well, the first thing I said was it's a Bigfoot looking around a tree down here. That was my first thought. But, I've been around a lot of Bigfoot and seen quite a few of them. And now everybody always talks about red-eyed Bigfoot. I've never seen a red-eyed Bigfoot. They've all had black eyes. But I don't know what it was for sure, but the way it was swaying back and forth and looking around and then peeking on the other side, Bigfoot are known as the peekers, and they'll do that. They'll look on one side and then sway back and look on the other. But whatever it was really tall, and it was looking right at us.
Oh, yeah.
It knew we were watching.
And I had never seen that before, ever.
Wow.
And so when Darrell said he thought it was Bigfoot, I mean, I wasn't surprised at all because it did not look like anything I had ever seen. I mean, these eyes were like just glaring red, like a red beam.
You almost have to picture the area they live in, okay? Because let me paint you a quick picture of it. It's a real exclusive area that used to be the country, and this was actually a large plantation in the late 1700s through the end of the 1800s, and it was a horse breeding farm for horse races. And they raised thoroughbreds here and had, I think Lori looked up, hundreds of slaves that lived here. But I think that's got a lot of the connection to do with what she's saying and what I've seen here too, because I think it's a lot of the spirits of the ones who were probably killed or mistreated or whatever happened to them. So I don't know what that was that night. By the size of it, it was nothing like we'd ever seen. So I would lean more toward maybe some type of cryptid, because it wasn't like what we'd seen before. But this area it's not in the middle of the city. It's there's a lot of, one side of this area has, I mean, humongous homes and very, very expensive, right on the lake, on Old Hickory Lake, a large lake. And Lori and them are in the same area, but they're in a different section of it. And the plantation is not too far from them. And there's another lake between them and the plantation. It's really kind of in the country with a really nice subdivision right in the middle of the country. So there's stores and things not far away, but it's still a lot of country here. So they could be coming from woods and lots of other areas in the area besides just the homeowners area. So
when the owner built the plantation, the plantation had 2,200 acres and slaves everywhere, but the home had been attacked twice by Indians. The Civil War was right here. The Union soldiers actually occupied the home. So people see, there's been reports of seeing soldiers constantly around here, Indians. I mean, everything happened right here. So it's no wonder.
The whole ground has been, it just absorbs it. I know that, like, just living so I lived in Washington State. That's where I grew up. And then moving here, the ground feels different to me. The ground over there is very fresh, but you feel very Native American feel to it, but it's a different Native American feel. Then when we moved here, the ground, I don't know if there's very much areas that I've gone that don't have some sort of feel to it. The ground here is saturated, in this whole Midwest area. It's saturated, and that's because there's just so much energy in the soil.
Yeah. Hey, Darrell, real quick. I know you told me you've been to the Bell Witch. Can you, it has nothing to do with good ghosts, but can you talk about your experience at the Bell Witch, with the Bell Witch?
I used to, when I was in high school, I had a lot of friends that were the Bell Witch, and we only lived maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes to the Bell Witch Cave, and I would get a whole gang of friends would follow me, and it'd be 20, 25 cars and trucks, and we'd all go up there to the Bell Witch Cave every year. We made it an annual thing, and it went on for even 4 or 5 years after I got out of school. And we had went to, every year we'd go to the Bell Witch Cave and go through it. We had some really weird things happen there, like trying to take pictures in front of it, and you couldn't take a picture, the flash would catch on fire, that kind of stuff. That went on forever. But we were at, we had went to the Bell Cemetery, which is in the middle of town, but this is Adams, Tennessee. It's way out in the country. And the Bell Cemetery is really nice. It has an iron fence around it, and it's mostly just the Bell family buried there from way back. And not too far from there at that time, it's burnt now, but there was the old Bell house. And that was not the original home they lived in. It was a log house that was way gone, but this was the house after that. And we knew where it was at, and we had been told about it by the local people up there that there'd been a lot of things seen over there, but we couldn't go because it was no trespassing and you weren't supposed to go over there. So me and three of my buddies decided that we were going to go anyway. So not too far from the cemetery, we probably had 15 or 20 vehicles parked there. So we drove down probably a half a mile and pulled into the long driveway, and it was blocked off with like a barricade with like a fence and several other things that had no trespassing on it. And we all talked about it, and we decided, let's go for it. So we went around the barricade, got over the part of the fence, and went into the old house. And one of me had flashlights, and when we opened the door and went in, I was downstairs. I was looking at the old fireplace with my flashlight and just checking it out. It was kind of neat looking. Nobody'd been in there in a long time. You could tell that. And there was a staircase to the right, and it went up and it turned to the left, and then it went straight again and turned back to the right. And there was big windows right next to the staircase, large windows. But the windows were broken out. There were no glass in them. And I was looking around the fireplace, and two of my friends went up the steps, and I could hear them walking up because it was a wooden step, and it was pretty loud, them walking up. It was like a hollow inside there, kind of like echoing. And they got about so far up, and then I heard them holler, "Go!" And I said, "What is that about?" And I heard the other friend of mine say that. And they dropped their flashlights, and I could hear them bouncing down the staircase. And they passed me, running past me out toward the door, and ran right by me. And I just yelled at them, "Where you guys going?" And they said, "Go." And I said, "Well, let me go get your flashlights." So I went up the staircase, got about halfway up it, and made the first right turn. And there was this large window to the left, and I just turned to look with my flashlight at the window because I could see something there, and there was a man looking through the window, and he looked like he had that 1800 type of white collar around his neck, and it was an old looking. What I thought was, it looked so real, it looked like a real person, but it was looking through the window with no expression at all, just looking right through the window at me. And of course, I took off running and went out the front, and we took off back to where everybody else was at. So that was actually probably the first ghost I'd ever seen. And we actually went back the next day during the daylight, and there's nowhere for anybody to stand up there. It's about 25 feet off the ground. So wow. He was just somehow looking through the window from nowhere to stand. So we figured for sure that it was a ghost, and all three of us seen it. And we had actually went back again, and we never seen anything there again in that area. So my first ghost there. So very strange, though, it just staring at us.
It's pretty cool. Honestly, the Bell Witch Cave, that's on my bucket list.
Mine too.
One of the places. So let's plan a road trip.
We need a road trip.
Yeah, we need a road trip. We need a road trip to the Bell Witch Cave and Lori's house.
Yes, there we go.
Right.
You know, the weird thing about what I found out about Lori and I just over the last 3 or 4 years is that we have such an inner spirit with each other. She picks up things I do, and I pick up things she does. And we even have a lot of similarities with parents' names and everything else. It's really kind of strange, but we've discussed this many a time. So she's a really
There's
great
no
friend.
such thing
And
as coincidence.
No,
Remember
there
that.
isn't.
There's no such thing as coincidence. You guys were meant to be in each other's lives for a reason.
Actually,
Exactly.
what's really strange, her parents have the same name as my parents, both of them.
Wow, that's pretty
We
crazy.
both have an uncle with the same name.
Uncle with the same name. I'm adopted. She's adopted. So we have
Birthday's the same.
birthday's the same.
Holy cow.
It's crazy.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah,
Yes.
we were talking
Kindreds,
one night, and
definitely kindreds.
he mentioned, he mentioned his parents' names, and I said, "What?" And I said, "That's my parents' name." And so we started talking about this, that, and the other, and it's crazy.
Wow. That's crazy coincidence. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You guys are definitely made to be in each other's lives for a reason.
Yep. Absolutely.
Wholeheartedly believe that.
I'll do anything for him. He's a great guy.
Well, same with her. She's one of the best friends I've ever had. Her and Cindy here. So I love them both to death.
That's
We've had
awesome.
some really great experiences, that's for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it. Aaron, there's a quick question for you. Can you hear me? Okay, David says.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. Colin's gonna sit in for a second.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Hi, Colin.
Hey,
are you coming? Are you coming to the event this weekend?
Yeah, I am. I'm excited for it. I've been waiting pretty much all year for it. So.
Awesome. Are you ready to be potographs for pooches, or what is it? What is the Murray brandy?
It's Kids for Murray, but it's potograph for pooches.
Yeah, that's cool. I know
you're gonna have to work, Colin.
He's excited.
You're gonna have to work.
Yeah, Ava's looking at. She's excited to see you. Definitely. So, Aaron, do you want to answer David's question? He says, "I wonder if you were out of body when you met that nurse."
If very possible. I know that just kind of what I've been told. Like, I don't remember a whole lot when I was in the hospital because I was so sick. But it very well could have been because I remember there not being anyone around, which, I remember it being late at night. It was dark and nobody being around. And I remember feeling cold. And I honestly don't even remember, I don't remember having like the IV pole and stuff, which now that I think about it, which obviously, I mean, if I was that sick, I would have had IVs and everything else.
Sure.
I just remember being by myself. And
you could have been out of body.
And it very well could have been. Because I don't remember, I mean, thinking about it, I don't remember having like the hospital pole or IVs or anything. I just remember being cold in my hospital gown and there being nobody around and just that feeling of I'm so alone. I'm alone. And this nurse just coming out of nowhere. And I don't remember there being any other nurses. Just her and her helping me. So I mean, that's a really good question. I think I've thought about it before, and there's a part of me that it's sad, maybe scary to think about that. I know I think that the shiny lady in the corner, I've always thought that was one of my guardian angels. That was one of my guides, whatever you want to call her. I do feel that was somebody from heaven sent. But the nurse, I still that's a good question because it very well could have been just kind of recanting the situation. It sounds very similar.
Yeah. Yep.
So. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
I was glad to be able to share that story with Darrell so he knows that, there's other people that have, at least that you can, physically talk to.
I have never told anybody this story. I started telling Krista about it the other day because I wanted to get with Lori before I actually told it, because we agreed, well, I don't know if we should tell it because people won't believe us and they'll think we're just crazy, but it's an actual true, really happening thing. All that happened, and we probably left out a few times, but it was a real ride for about a year there over this thing. It had me so weirded out that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. So we would discuss it. I'd call her and she'd go, I don't know either. I don't know what we ought to do. So she had me at the house throwing eggs over my shoulder, and I was doing everything you could think of. She said, you need to get some eggs and throw them over your shoulder. And I'm out in the backyard in front of my house.
He's Googling all sorts of Hindu witchcraft.
I got sage burning in the bathtub. I got it in the bathroom. I mean, I'm just weirded out big time. I didn't know what to do, and I was never been around anything like this, and it was like not leaving either. So, she would get tickled at me. She'd go, did you throw the egg right? I said, I don't know if I threw it right or not. I threw it over my shoulder. So
I just threw it.
I don't know what it is about the egg, but I threw a bunch of them. So
who knows if he even hit anything? I don't know what happened.
Right.
about the egg.
Yeah, I had a psychic tell me that years ago that at that time she felt some kind of actually demon that she could see behind me, and I was like, what? And she said, yes, I need you to go home and at midnight boil some eggs and throw them over your shoulder and don't look at them. So I did it, and I thought, well, Darrell was all weirded out and I was weirded out, so it was something bad. It wouldn't hurt.
Right. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. You try whatever in those moments.
Right. I would have just taken salt or something. I would have thought about eggs, but that would have been out of my mind.
I didn't know anything about salt at that time. I was looking for anything to make sure this, whatever it was, wouldn't get me. So it was definitely, the feeling of this thing being around me was really intense.
It was me too. I thought I was just losing.
I didn't want to go to sleep because every time I went to sleep, I'd have some kind of crazy dream about Deidre.
Right.
So we both probably thought we were going crazy. I know I did. So
me too.
I was definitely happy when the ordeal was over with. I can promise you that. So we haven't seen her since. I hope she's very happy with us because we're happy with her. So
absolutely,
I would guess that's the case.
Yeah. So Marie says, I think you all helped the nurse out through it all, and then her other comment says, and the nurse helped Darrell out, and she's right, 100%. 100%.
Thanks, Marie.
And then David said, he's lucky he has a cousin he can talk to about ghosts and all, and that's true. A lot of people, don't have other people. That's
that's why we do
very
this
true.
stuff.
Yeah,
that's why we do these things, so people can come on here and talk about it.
It's important. Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. Because I mean, who are we to judge? Even with the UFOs and the cryptids, the same thing. To me, it's all in the same type realm. I wasn't there, so
I believe
I can't.
100%. They're all connected. They're all connected somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I guess
but
we'll
I felt kind of bad. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine, Darrell. Go ahead.
Felt kind of bad because I was actually doing a show with Barton Unley, who's a really good friend, and Josh at Paranormal Roundtable about a week ago at about 1:00 in the morning. And they asked me if I had any ghost stories, and I didn't want to tell them wrong, but I didn't want to tell them this story without contacting Lori, because we had made an agreement that we wouldn't talk about it until we got together and decided to tell people, because everybody people think you're crazy. My own family, I tried to tell them, they thought I was crazy. They go, you need to go see a doctor because you were medicated. You didn't see any of that. And I even had that conversation tonight with my parents. They said, son, you need to go to the doctor. Well, my dad told me. I said, well, maybe I do, but I've seen it. And It was.
Oh yeah,
pretty-
absolutely. I mean, we hear it all the time about, oh, there's no such thing. You know, you've got your skeptics
yeah.
and things, but there are things that we've experienced. We have evidence stating that this really happens. And you can't say that it doesn't. I mean, there's things that you can't explain. So there's no basis for anybody to tell you that you're crazy, because you're
Right.
not. You're not. Because they can't explain it, you can't explain it. Well, here we are. We can talk about it all night, because I love talking about it.
I think
Right.
it's just like I just think it's just like the cryptid community that I've dealt with for over nearly 30 years now after my first sighting, because a lot of people still don't believe in Bigfoot or other cryptids, and those type of people have a really hard time wrapping their mind around something like that existing. So until you see one, a lot of people will always be skeptic, but when you do see one, I assure you, your mind will change forever. It changes your life.
It does.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing with a ghost. Until you see one or you hear one, you're not a believer.
Exactly.
And then some people try to make up all the excuses in the world how that happened, and I'm like, you're not making any sense.
Right.
Because you can't explain it.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with the cryptid world.
Yawn. Okay.
Looking at it their point of view, I understand what they're saying, because it would be hard for me to believe it. So I do understand, but still, it doesn't help the people who have seen these type things or had these experiences, because they're still looking at you like they think you're crazy. So, my own family did me about this story. I tried to tell it to them tonight before I came, and they were just like, "Really?" And I would lie to you about it, and they're just very, very unopen even toward me, even though they know I tell the truth. So it was.
Well, I'm really glad you shared the story with us. I mean, it's an unbelievable story, and I just don't. I'm left stunned, speechless. I don't even know really what to say to it, because I believe you. I know I've seen these things happen, and your story is just it's actually lifting me up, because you hear so much bad stuff anymore on media. Oh, ghosts are bad, demons, blah blah blah. It isn't true. Of course you're going to have bad seeds, as I'll call them, bad seeds. But they're just out here just like we are. They're just living in a different type of realm than we are. But they're still coming through. They're still crossing over, and I believe that the cryptid world is the same thing. They're out there.
Right.
They're out there. So
absolutely.
I am so glad that I got to hear the story.
Yes.
Sure.
I had talked to Krista several times this week about this, and she's become so close a friend to me. I told her about. I might tell it. I'll tell you a little bit about it. And then when I told her a little bit, she just had to have me tell it. So I said, well, let me get with Lori when I get back and talk to Lori, and I'll see if we can do it. So
I'm glad we did.
Well, you don't hear every day of ghosts saving someone's life.
No. And don't tell Krista a story unless you're going to tell it all, because she's going to get it out of you. Don't start.
That's true.
David says, I've been touched and had things thrown at me when there was no possible way for it to happen outside of spirits. You know what? I did too. I was actually at Ashmore Estates, and I was up on the 3rd floor. For anybody that's been to Ashmore, I know Brandy has. But I was up on the 3rd floor in a room by myself, and I had plaster thrown at me, and there was nobody else in the room.
Right.
So I get what you're saying, David, for sure.
Yeah. When you can't explain that sort of stuff.
Yep.
No, you can't explain it. And it's just, what you're telling us, Darrell, is so vivid that you can't make that up. You can't make it up.
Yeah. David says, very glad you guys are brave enough to tell your story. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you all for having.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Krista.
Yes.
And Aaron and Brandy, all of you. Where'd Mark? I guess Mark left. I don't know who the little guy is there, but thank you.
That's Colin.
That's Colin.
Okay. Hey,
Hey,
Colin.
Colin.
Well, we're going to say goodnight to everybody and
Yes.
call this a night. We've got a busy week. We have our Fall into the Supernatural
Yes.
coming up this weekend.
We do.
Friday is a Bigfoot hunt. Saturday is, I guess, a conference with speakers. And then Saturday night is a ghost hunt at the Ray County Museum. There's a few tickets left. So you could always go on Eventbrite to Fall into the Supernatural on Eventbrite. And all the tickets are up there listed for sale. So Marie says, love the story. And Nighthawk says, been watching, love you all. So
Yes.
appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Nighthawk.
Appreciate the love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just mention one of the reasons why I kind of had Colin pop in is that here in the next few weeks, we're going to do a topic on kids and abilities. And I think it'd be great to have Colin on here to help if you know of kids that are kind of struggling and parents. I think that would be a really great topic. So my 13-year-old son, Colin, will be on here because he does have abilities. He was the one who, out of all the kids, he was the one who got blessed with that. So took him a while to get used to that, but he got blessed with that. So I think it would be really great to have a show on kids with abilities and parents, and allowing parents to ask Colin questions and ask me as a mom questions. And if you have any questions that you'd like to have us prepared for you, you can message the Blondes and Booze podcast and we'll have that ready for you. And we'll give people some information on that as well.
Yep, that'll be a good one. I'll also see if my daughter will come on too.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get Brittany on. I mean, she's not about it at all, but
right.
You all know her story. So,
Right.
Anyway, but we definitely want to thank everybody for coming in and listening to us and appreciate everybody.
Yes.
So
thank you.
We have got a busy week, so we will be offline. We will be MIA for a while. Real quick, Brandy, Aaron, and myself, we talked. We're going to make these shows on Thursday nights. We're going to do one a week. So just an FYI, and that'll be starting in October. So
yeah, we're going to settle in on Thursdays.
Yep, Thursday evenings, and it'll be 8 Central.
Yep.
So appreciate the love, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.